go to Genesis 4 with me. Genesis chapter 4. I'm going to go there as well. You guys good? You're real quiet today. Okay. Oh man, we're going to get into it today. So last week, if you guys were here last week, I talked about the 4 degrees of love. We talked through the different degrees, which are love of self. Thank you. Way to go. Love of self for self's sake was last week. We talked about what these are the kind of the degrees of love that really a person might experience throughout their journey as being a human, where we usually start off with love as being this selfish thing. It's a love of self for self. And last week I really dug into the idea of emotionalism in America right now, the idea of expressive individuality, and what that's doing to our culture in my truth, in living my truth, right? And how it requires validation and love from others in order for me to be affirmed. Okay, so if you haven't listened to it, I encourage you to go back because we're building off of that. And that was a monster of a, I think it took me 8 hours to prep that whole sermon. But not tuning my own horn. It was just, there's a lot in it. And I'm shocked that you guys came back. So that means the culture hasn't gotten into you. Good job. But this week I want to talk about love of God for self's sake. So this is kind of that next level, and really just the beginning of what loving God really usually starts like for most of us. It doesn't mean that this is a blanket statement that every single one of us come into Christianity and we only love God at the beginning for what he can do for us. I don't think that that's the truth. I think that's a blanket idea. But many of us do because of Western Christianity and because of the way that the gospel is presented to us as something that is so beneficial for you that we get so caught up in that idea of being benefited by God that we start to look at him as something that only is a benefit to us and a love that I can get, but not necessarily a love I can give. Does that make sense? This week, Liddy and I, we went to a Ben Rector concert. Anybody listen to Ben Rector? Okay, I'll let whoop, whoop, whoop. So Liddy and I went to a Ben Rector with the Detroit Symphony, and it was just amazing. It was so beautiful. Like we had a really busy, somewhat stressful day. And we drove into Detroit. We go up to this symphony. It was for Lydia's birthday, so I bought us box seats. So we had like elbow room. We could like snuggle, kiss a little bit. Okay, I'm done. But we're up in the box seats watching Ben Rector in a 70-person symphony of experts and musicianship, and we're just enjoying the beauty of all these soundtracks we've already listened to, but with the accompaniment of a symphony, and it sounded like the best movie track you've ever heard. It was just amazing. Like we sat there and just were like tears are in our eyes, like this is like if I could freeze this moment right now, I would. If I could stop time and just be here for a couple hours, I would, because if you've ever listened to Ben Rector, this is not a sermon about Ben Rector, but if you've ever listened to Ben Rector, he has such a good ability with his writing style to take you to a place. He has these different nostalgic songs about friends and how you can't make old friends because, for instance, Nate doesn't know what my house phone number was, right? Like he doesn't know what it was. It was 679-9620. I still remember, right? You remember your friend's house phone number because those were like your old friends. Ben Rector writes this wonderful song about like your old friends. You can't make old friends, right? And in the sense that there's people you've done life with for such a long time. You have all these nostalgic memories and stuff like that. Not to say that you're not, and you are an old friend at this point. More so on your age, but I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But he has such great writing ability that just transports you to these scenes. And there's this beautiful song, if you haven't heard it, the Thanksgiving song. When you get around to Thanksgiving, you got to play it because it's beautiful. Like you're not even involved in his life. He's writing about how I can still see my dad and my nephew's eyes and things like that. And you're just like, oh, that's so wholesome. And we love his music because it transports you to a different place. And many of you guys can think about different people that you're like, oh, I just love this person's music. Their music is so good. How many have like a favorite artist where you're like, man, when I listen to this person's music, it takes me to a just different place. I lose sight of where I am, and I just am in the zone. And really, like, I love Ben Rector, but I don't know Ben Rector. Like, I've never personally met him. The Wednesday was the closest I've ever been to his person, and I didn't get to talk to him. But I say, oh, I love Ben Rector. Man, his music is so awesome. It's so good. There's so many good things about it. But in reality, I don't even know him. I don't actually have a relationship with him. I actually have no investment in him. All of the investment of my relationship with Ben Rector is actually on him. It's more so, what do I get from Ben Rector? Did he write a new song? Is there a new hit? Oh, that song with Snoop Dogg was really funny. You know, whatever. It's like he writes these amazing songs. You're like, oh, that's so awesome. I love it. And you could name the artist for you. It might be Andre Bocelli, who my friends in the back just went to see recently. It could be Brandon Lake. It could be Taylor Swift. It could be Post Malone. It could be whoever it is. It could be Noah Khan. It could be, you know what? You know who it really could be? Haters like to hate, but maybe it's Nickelback. And, you know, maybe you're just like, I just love Nickelback. Look at this photograph. It makes me laugh. Yep, see, that might be for you. I love Nickelback, right? And the reality is you love them, or you love Taylor Swift or Post Malone or John Mayer, or, you know, you can name it. You love them for what they can give you. You have no investment into relationship with them. It's completely based off the product they have delivered to you and how that product makes you feel. This doesn't make you a shallow human being, right? When you think about these different people, obviously, if you're deep within your heart with the relationship with the Lord, you can look at someone like Andre Bocelli and you can love them in a selfless way where you're like, I don't love you just for your product, right? But many times we start loving artists because of the product they give us initially. Amen? Yeah. My first concert was a Nail Point concert, okay? Nate was playing drums. First concert I ever went to was Nate's concert. I didn't even know who Nate was. He threw me a drumstick, and I loved Nate. Loved him. But my love for Nate now is different than my love back then, because I was stoked that the drummer threw me a drumstick, but now I'm stoked that I get to do communion and relationship with Nate. Is this making sense? So love of God for self's sake, it's very similar to this. It's not wrong for us to benefit from our relationship with God. It's wisdom for us to understand that when I come to the Lord, everything that he has to give me, everything that he gives me in relationship with him, it is good, right? It's wisdom to know I am bankrupt without God, okay? That I actually need everything that he has to give me. I need it really bad. Right, to keep myself in line. The problem is our initial need can continue in a sense where we like God for what he gives us and not necessarily for who he is. Okay? And so in the end, our love for God is actually love for our own benefit. I want you to remember that statement. Love for my own benefit. And there's a series of development where love actually turns from love for my benefit to love for our benefit, for who you are, for who I am, and how we exist together. In the end, our love for these strangers in comparison to our children, our spouses, or the people we do life with on a daily basis is different because our love is not based on transactions, but it's based on mutual devotion. We don't love them for what we can get from them. We love them for who they are to us. So we begin to love God because we start to hear this concert of harmony beating within the family of the Trinity. It's a whirlwind of cascading love towards one another, and we somehow get sucked into that whirlwind of love that God is and get absorbed into it, and then all of a sudden we're participating in this love that he is. The problem is we really like that love in sometimes a selfish way, where we see the nail-scarred hands of Jesus, and we look at that from a standpoint of, thank you for doing that for me. Can I have more, please? You hearing me? Can I get a little bit more? Can I get a little more blessing? Can I get a little more promises? Can I get a little more dreams fulfilled? And we don't realize the gift that Jesus already is to us. I heard it said that once that the loudest end of the pool is the shallow end. That the loudest end of the pool is always going to be the shallow end, because it's where all the kids who don't know how to swim, it's where you got the kids with the floaties on. It's all my kids, really. They're all in that side, and they're being loud and crazy. And then the deeper you go, the quieter it gets, because you have maturity as the depth goes, and you learn how to swim. And it's wisdom to understand that we need God, but without his generosity, without his generosity, there would be little to entice our shadowy self-absorbed, darkened hearts to come walk into the light. So we choose him because we find worth in choosing him, but it's the shallow end of the pool when we just choose him for what he gives us. The deep end of the pool is when we choose him for who he is, okay? But yay, we're in the pool no matter what, right? Like when you choose Jesus, you're in the pool. Yeah, let's go. So here's what we're really talking about today is I don't want to cast condemnation or guilt or shame. If you're somebody in this room, you're like, I find myself being the person you're describing today, Ethan, somebody who loves God for what he can get, for what I can get from him, from the dreams and promises and prosperity that he promised me. If you find yourself in this room that realizing that I've looked at Christianity as a consumer-based idea, I'm not throwing weight on you. I'm showing you that there's a deeper end of the pool that is so much more fun and way less loud, because the loud end of the pool has a lot of opinions. Yep, it has a lot of requests. It has a lot of crying because of what was done or was not done. But the deeper you go and the more mature you are, the more humble you are, the more low you become, and the more you realize this is actually more about him than it is about me. That I died, and it's no longer it's no longer I who live, but it's Christ who lives in me. You here with me? Okay, we're going, okay? The goal is to make our way out of the shallow end. A.W. Tozer, he says this: what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. And so when we're thinking of God, if our first initial thoughts are, what can you do for me? When we pray, prayer reveals a lot of what's going on inside of us. If we're praying for me, that's a good indicator of what's going on. It doesn't, again, I'm not saying it's wrong. There's just depth that we could find, okay? So no shame, no guilt, but we're going to get into this whole idea. So Genesis 4, I'm going to read through this whole story of Cain and Abel. But I want to set the stage for you just for a quick second. So you have Cain and Abel, which are the first sons of Adam and Eve. I want you to imagine this. Adam and Eve are kicked out of the garden, okay? We're not going to get into all the theology and all the things and dynamics that happened with Adam and Eve getting out. Most of you, if you've been a Christian for a while, you understand. They ate the apple, you're gone. So they're out of the garden, but one of the curses is you're going to work the land and you're going to live by the sweat of your brow. Okay, so Adam and Eve are out imagine being in a field, and for the first time, you have to plant your tree. You have to plant your harvest. You have to gather your sheep. You have to do all of these things to exist. You're literally working for a living, okay? They never had to work for a living because they were alive and they didn't need to work because God had already worked it out, right? So now they're with their sons and they're tilling the ground. They're making fruit. They're making harvest. They're getting livestock and things like that. And I imagine Adam as he's hoeing through this field, his boys being like, Dad, what was it like before this? Like, Dad, what was it like when you just walked in the cool of the day with God and that everything was just good and there was no sweat and there was no furrowed brow? Like, you know how like we get wrinkles from frowning, right? They didn't get wrinkles from frowning. They got wrinkles from smiling, right? Smile wrinkles. And And I imagine just Cain and Abel being like, Dad, like, what was it like before all of this? Like they've got blistered hands. They're in the heat of the sun. There is no oneness with the Lord. Dad, what was it like before this? And I imagine Adam just being like, it was so good. It was so good. Everything was right. And now it's not. So Cain and Abel come onto the scene. We're going to read through this. It says, now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again, she bore his brother Abel. And now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel also brought the first fruit of his flock, the firstborn of his flock, and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry, and why has your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? If you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? He said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength, and you shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. Then the Lord said to him, not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest anyone who found him should attack him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Okay? We good? That's a lot of reading. Okay, we're going to go back through it now, verse by verse. Okay? So you have Cain and Abel. Cain has this amazing idea right at the beginning of this. But first we have to start with Eve. So Eve bears a son, and you have to understand there was no other human beings. There was Adam and Eve, okay? Eve bears a son, and what does she say? She says, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. I want you to see something here. The beginning of the existence of humanity, where Eve gets to participate with God in bearing human creation, which is the image bearers of God. She's literally the first to bring forth man out of her body. It's amazing. Women, you are the bomb. Let's go, women. Men can't do that, right? Even if you identify as a woman, you can't. Okay? You can't do it. Women are just so stinking strong. I saw a video of a pastor who tried to do announcements and they hooked him up with the labor pain things. He was crying like a baby. Women don't do that. Women are just like, they're so stinking strong. Anyways, so she brings forth this baby, and what does she say? She says, I have begotten a man with the help of the Lord. So initially, right at the beginning, not only is it like we're already in a wrong spot, now we're in a spot where Eve goes, God helped me in this. Not God did this, or that God was the initial creator, but God somehow was involved in this. And you can start to see man's separation from needing God. Well, he helped me. No, he was the one who initiated the creation within you. You're participating with his creation, not the other way around. God's not helping you with your creation. You're helping in his. Okay? You're seeing where all at the beginning, there is framework and there's mindsets that are messed up. So Cain is begot, right? And again, she gives birth to Cain, and then again, she gives birth to Abel. Now, Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain was a worker of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering, which is the word manna. Okay? It is of the fruit of the ground. Cain here, he brings an offering to the Lord. That word manna, it means offering. Okay? That offering, if we're going to Bible school real quick, we're good? That word offering, it literally means offering. It does not distinct between, oh, well, Abel brought a firstborn of a sheep, and so that's really nice because God really likes blood sacrifices, later in the Bible. So yeah, we got to connect that. No, literally, he brought his manna, and Abel brought his manna. Okay? There is no like, oh, this one's special, this one's not. When they bring their offering to the Lord, it is 100% about the heart posture behind the offering. It has nothing to do with the offering itself. Cain's offering actually could have been worth tons more. It could have been worth way, way more. But if the heart is wrong, the whole thing is wrong. Okay? We here? So after tirelessly cultivating the land and investing his heart and soul into making that harvest, Cain has this brilliant idea. He's like, oh my gosh, look at all of what I've done. I've poured my heart, my soul into all of this. Like I'm gonna gather up everything that I have and I'm gonna bring it to the Lord and I'm gonna give him something, okay? I want you to take note. The first worship leader in the whole Bible is Cain, the murderer. Uh-oh, that's a problem. Right? The first person to have an idea of, oh my gosh, I'm going to bring this to God. He's like, this is such a good idea. Look at all of what I've brought in. I'm going to bring this. I'm going to take it to the Lord as an act of worship. And I believe that it was actually the Holy Spirit inspiring him into relationship with the Lord. But how many of you guys know divine inspiration is not always the same as fleshy intentions? Divine inspiration, you can have a dream by God. God could be like, this is what I have for you. I made you with purpose, with promise. Here's all the amazing things you're going to do in your life. Right? And then what do we do with that? We take it and we go, how do I use this to promote me? How do I take what you gave me and then turn it into a benefit, turn myself into a beneficiary of that thing? And here's what we see happen is Cain has this brilliant God-ordained idea in my mind that it was the Holy Spirit saying, hey, you were born to worship. You should thank God. And so Cain's gathering all of his stuff and he's marching over to the Lord, right? He's like, I've got the gift. And Abel's over here with his sheep and he's like, that seems like a good idea. I'm going to get the best that I have, the best cuts of meat, the best things. I'm going to do the same thing too. So Abel's not like, oh, I want to be a worship leader too. He's just following in suit. He's like, my older brother's doing something cool. I should do that. And guess what? They're not playing Nintendo or playing PlayStation after work, right? Like they're not like, you want to go play pickleball after we get off work today? No, they're like bored, right? Okay. How bored would you be being the first people on the planet? Like you got lots of time to think. So Cain's like, I have an idea for our extracurricular activities other than staying alive. Let's bring Jesus, let's bring the Lord a gift. And Abel's like, oh, okay, that seems like a good idea. Okay, so here's what we see. And Abel brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering. But for Cain, his offering, he had no regard. So Cain was very angry and his face fell. So Cain becomes angry when God does not regard his gift. Here's what I want you to know. That word regard is saza, which is the Hebrew word to see. Like I'm seeing this. And what happens is Abel brings his gift to the Lord. He's like, I'm just so thankful for who you are. Thank you. This is a good idea. We were made to worship. Thank you. I'm still alive. Thank you for covering my sin. Because you have to understand, they're not giving a sacrifice to be like, oh yeah, this is just fun. They're literally like, oh my gosh, this could be a way back into righteousness. This is amazing. So I'm going to give this gift. Oh, thank you. And God says, I sazad, he regarded Abel's saza. With Cain, he did not saza. So what does that mean? When Abel brought his gift to the Lord, he goes, here, God, look at it. And God goes, that's amazing. I can see your heart in the gift you're giving. With Cain, he says, no, I have no regard for that. What does that mean? God's not saying I'm comparing the two. He's saying, Cain, I can't see your heart. I can't saza this. Abel, I can see his heart. I see it because he gave me his heart in the gift. With Cain, here, God, but I don't see you in it. Like, this is something else. Okay? And what we're about to see is how Cain was loving God for his own sake. So God wasn't looking at the offering in Cain's hands. He was looking through the offering into Cain's heart. God wasn't comparing and contrasting the two gifts. He was comparing the gift to the giver of the gift. That's important for us to understand. Okay? Cain was not really offering love or gratitude to God, but instead he was buying a coverage plan from God. He basically was coming to the Lord and he's saying, I'll worship you for the gift I can get from you. So he's initially inspired, what I believe, by the Holy Spirit, and he goes, oh, I can buy my righteousness? I can buy forgiveness? I can work my way into this thing? Here. And God goes, this is not how my relationship with you works. Rabbi David Foreman, in his book, The Beast That Crouches at the Door, he writes this, gratitude has very little to do with the recipient's need. Because this is so, it is not crucial that gifts of gratitude be expensive or abundant, but it is important that one give his best. When a gift masquerades as gratitude, but is really a glorified insurance policy, it doesn't help our relationship with the recipient one little bit. When I give you a gift because, I'm giving you this because of what I can get, what do we call that in our society? We call it manipulation. We call it, I'm going to do something for you so I can get something from you. We call it doing things and controlling things. And if I can turn the right gears and play chess with these relationships, I'll get what I want out of it. And we say, that person's manipulative, right? Yeah. As soon as you start to realize this person actually only loves me for what they can get from me, everybody goes, no. Right? That's your instant reaction as a human to go, no. I don't think I want to be around that person because you clearly only love me for what you can get from me. And God gives Cain the same response. Cain goes, here, what can I get from you? And God's like, no, that's not how we do this. This isn't family. This isn't friendship. This isn't me being a father to you. This is something weirdly different. So we find Cain seeking to appease God, not actually loving him. He wanted God as a Mr. Clean Bar, but not as a friend. The problem is not what Cain brought to God, but how Cain brought his offering to God. Okay? If you've ever read this as a Christian before, you might go, okay, yeah, God's like comparing, contrasting the gifts. Like God was saying, oh, Abel, your gift is great. Cain's, yours is the worst. Gosh, do you even know me? That's not what's happening. He's going, Abel, your heart's in the offering. I see it. Cain, your heart's not in it. This isn't a gift. This is you buying forgiveness. This is you buying righteousness. This is you doing some weird twisted thing to just try to work something out between us. And guess what? I want it more than you do. That's good news, guys. So the act of offering the first yield for Abel is really him saying, here is my best. It's all that I have. And it's only because of you. The only reason that Abel brought it, he's like, I can't have any of these sheep without you. So here's my absolute best. Cain didn't bring God his best. Cain didn't bring God the best of what he had, but he brought some of the best that he had. His concern was, what kind of return can I get off of this? I want you to understand this, especially as it relates to generosity. When we give God some of what we have and not the best of what we have, what we're saying to him is, I like you, just not enough to give you my best. I like you for what I can get, but not enough for what I can give. Are we here? Okay, this ties into tithing, but tithing, what we've said before, tithing is worship. Tithing is me saying, I couldn't have any of this if it wasn't for you. So here's the best that I have that you gave me. You gave me the best, so I'm going to give it back. Okay, but sometimes we like to go, well, I'll give him some of what I have. I'll give him a little bit here. I'll give him a little bit there. It'll count. It'll score me points in heaven. Like, he's good. Yeah, I'm getting points. And God's like, this is not how I work. I give my best. I give my son. I lay my life. This is how relationship works with me. Okay, and here's the deal. You're like, oh, this seems hard. It's actually not that hard. It's just thankfulness. That's why, like, when we talk about worship, I'm like, you guys, we got to be thankful. Thank you. Thank you. Lift up thankfulness. Lift up a shout of thankfulness, right? I'm like, guys, we got to be, because here's the thing. If we give God a half-hearted response, yeah, I mean, thank you. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I guess what you did on that thing was all right. What does that say? It devalues the relationship. And then we go, I don't know why I can't feel God. I don't know why I don't know the presence of God. I don't know why I can't hear him. I don't know. It's like you're giving him a half-hearted response. You're working for love, and he's like, can I help you? I already have, but can we do this without these games? So again, love of God, it's love of God for self. It's love expressed for its own benefit. Okay? When we love God's presence or who he is, when we must love God's presence and who he is more than what his hands can do for us. His hands have already done so much for us because our names are already written on his hands. So then in verse 6, it says, the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face fallen? Understand this. Think about the prodigal son. We see the prodigal son moment in this story right here. He's like, Cain, why has your face fallen? We're not talking about a God who was like, I'm not part of it. Get out of here. Right? He's like, Cain, why is your face fallen? What's going on? And then he continues, if you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at your door. It is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. So God shows us that our great ideas and agendas can actually become sin crouching at our door. That our great ideas of how we can do this Christian thing can actually become sin that wants to rule over us. That means that when we come to church and we start thinking, well, we're going to go both ways. If I exuberantly worship enough, he'll love me even more. Right? What's that? That's works-based worship. That's if I do enough, he'll love me more. Here's on the contrary, though. When he has already done so much for us, and it's hard to even get us to worship, what does that look like? That looks like a half-hearted response to the one who paid it all for us. So we have to find ourselves somewhere in between, where we actually allow the theology and the belief systems of who Jesus is to actually work its way out of our bodies and worship him, okay? And again, I'm not saying jumping jacks and dancing is wrong by any means. Yeah, I don't care if you run around this room and shout and scream, and you're going to do that at a Lions game. I do that at a Lions game. I'm like, let's go! You know what I mean? And then we come into the presence of God, the one who saved us, who will literally lead us into eternity in love and contentment and peace and wonderful things for the rest of eternity. Yay, God. Yay. Right? But St. Brown caught a touchdown. You're going nuts. I'm going nuts, right? It's to find ourselves in a place where we can go, I can approach God not for what I can get from him, but what can I give to him? What can I give to him that's meaningful for our relationship? Okay? Okay, so God is correcting love of God for self in Cain. I want you to hear this. It's like he's saying this to Cain. In efforts to get in right standing with me, you are trying to love me for what you can get from me. This is not how love, gratitude, or friendship works. I will not engage in your twisted version of a gift exchange. Because that's all it was. He was like, I'm not going to play this weird gift exchange idea where you give me something and I'm going to give you something back, that it's actually meaningless for you, it's meaningless for me. This isn't how relationship works. Like, have you ever, we're going to get into it. Have you ever, like, in holidays, Christmas time, birthday time, right? Somebody gets you a gift and it's like, oh, that's awesome. But let's say somebody doesn't get you a gift. I remember when we were early married, somebody didn't get me a gift for my birthday. And Lydia's like, it came around to their birthday, and Lydia's like, let's get them a birthday gift. And I was like, they didn't give me a birthday gift. Why are we getting them a birthday gift? They didn't get me one. That's what's fair, right? Like, I mean, they didn't give me one, so I don't need to give them one. That's selfishness. And we like to make excuses. Well, I don't need to because they didn't give me one, so I don't need to. What is that? It's a lack of generosity. You don't give gifts for what you can get from somebody. You give gifts because of who they are. You give gifts to say, I just love you this much. I love you this much. This is how much I love you. And it's not what are you going to give me in return? Right? That's why my Christmas presents are always way more expensive than Lydia's. Because she just gives me her best, and I give her just, I'm just kidding. Okay, nobody laughed at that. I'm joking, okay? But that's the thing is like, yeah, I do have more expensive taste. But that's the thing though, is sometimes we come to the Lord and it's like, we think like, oh, if I can do all these things, I'll make a really expensive offering. I'll pray myself, fast myself, do all these different things to get him to like me. And really what you're doing is you're trying to say, I gave you a really expensive gift. Give something in return. Yeah. Give something in return. And I'm telling you, the expense is not about quality. It's not about quality. It's about when we try to do things that are just above and beyond for love, we miss the whole fact that he already loves us. That he's not asking for us to come up with something or conjure something up. He's asking for your heart. He doesn't want to look at this weird product that you've created. He wants to look at your heart. And so he approaches Cain with that whole thing. He's like, I can't do this gift exchange with you. In this working for love model, we reveal we're working for love that we can get, not love that we can give. And that is legalism. This is, again, why the loudest part of the pool in Christianity is the shallow end. The shallow end is the loudest because it's the people that want the most attention and probably need the most attention. Here's the deal with this whole pool analogy. You're always going to have a shallow end. Church, come on, guys. Some of you have been Christians for a long time. You're always going to have a shallow end in a church. Why? Because you can't microwave a Christian into maturity, right? A pool needs mature swimmers and it needs adolescent swimmers because the mature swimmers teach the adolescent swimmers how to swim maturely. Okay? And so as the new ones come in, they're really loud, and then you start to go, hey, he already loves you. You don't need to do anything to get him to love you anymore. He loves you. Come out here. Come to the deep end. No one said hi to me today at church, right? Well, I don't feel like they love me. This is not it, right? It's like, no, this actually, it's not about you as much as you think it is. Jesus said, lay your life down. He said, take the low road, be humble, be meek. That means like lower yourself, relax. Like that's my kids right now. We get into the water and they're like, you know what I mean? I'm like, calm down. Big motions, not little motions, big motions, because you're like, you have to tread water with big swimming motions. It's not like my son's kicking his feet, like just Sonic underwater. The hedgehog is, and I'm like, that's not gonna work. You need to like big movements. And that's what we do in Christianity, where somebody comes in and then we get offended. Oh my gosh, I can't believe they wouldn't love me back. I can't believe they wouldn't love me the way that I deserve to be loved. So I'm only going to love the people that I can get love back from. I'm only going to value the people that I can get something from. I'm only going to love that person because they have status in my mind, or because they don't have a mental problem, or because they're this. But in reality, Jesus is like, I came for the lowest. And so by maturing, you move your way out of the loudest section and you move your way into the most quiet and contentment place, and you enjoy the Lord. That's why some of the most mature people in this congregation are the quietest and the most soft-spoken, because they are content in the Lord, that they're not leaning on you to get salvation. They're not leaning on you to get love. Like you won't ever have Georgina come up to you and go, I don't know why you don't love me the way I want you to love me, right? Because she's getting her love from a different source, right? You don't have that. because there's maturity that's been developed where it's like, this is good. This is just good, right, Jan? You're like, this is good. I don't need you to tell me it's good. It just is, okay? You're screaming and crying. I'm telling you, all the afflictions, all the problems will go away when you go, I'm participating in relationship with Jesus. This is actually life and life to the abundantly full. But we like to turn Christianity way more about what we get. And you don't realize that you get the most when you lay your life down. I'm going to say that again. You get the most when you lay your life down. Jesus said, you try to pick it up, you lose it. You lay it down, you get it back. Okay? Hebrews 11:14, Paul writes this. He says, by faith, Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain, through which he was commended as righteous. God commended him by accepting his gifts, and through his faith, though he died, he still speaks. Abel wanted God more than God could give him. You hear? Abel wanted God more than what God could give him. The outcome of that is righteousness, and the door is open to Abel to participate in the Trinity's love and fellowship. Cain wanted righteousness more than God. The outcome is Cain can't participate in love and fellowship because you can't buy from God what he's already going to give you. And in our case, you can't buy from God what he's already given. If your daddy gives you a big old thing of inheritance, you don't say, can I buy that from you? No, he gave it to you. Okay? Cain was purchasing faith in a shallow attempt of a transaction with God who wasn't for sale. In verse 8, it says, Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. So Abel's correct gift to God became this measuring stick to Cain. It's this new bar set. He's like, this is the bar for humanity, that we give our lives to worshiping the Lord. And this measuring stick is in front of Cain, and he goes, I'm not measuring up. Not because God's comparing Cain to Abel, but Cain is comparing himself to Abel. You understanding this? This is not a weird story where God's going, comparing and contrasting between two individuals saying, well, I like you, I don't like you, you could be better. No, he's saying, I'm comparing your gift to you. I'm comparing your gift to you. These don't actually have anything in common to each other. One is a grain offering, the other is a livestock offering. They're different. So I'm comparing it to you, and Cain goes, yeah, I hate this. I'm going to kill the measuring stick. If I get rid of the measuring stick, this fixes my problem. What is this? Jealousy, lack of celebration. It's sin crouching at your door, waiting to take you. And we all know the end of the story because we just read it. Cain kills Abel. And in killing Abel, everybody in the story loses. Adam and Eve lose a son. God loses one of his kids, right? And Cain becomes a wanderer. So let's go here. In verse 9. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? He said, I do not know. I am your brother's keeper. He's a liar. And the Lord said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying for me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its fruit. You shall be a fugitive and listen, a wanderer on the earth. And Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive, and again, a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. Watch this, grace. Consequence, grace. So he receives his consequence, here's grace. Then the Lord said to him, not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest anyone who found him should attack him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. So God in grace says, yes, you're receiving consequence for your sin, but I'm going to give you a gift. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to put something on you that says, don't you kill this person. You seeing this? It is the story of the prodigal son. It is a son who came to the Lord saying, I want you for what you can give me. I'm going to take this inheritance. I'm going to run with it. And then he comes back, and it's like, what are you doing? the Father runs the Son in sin. And he says, why is your face fallen? Sin's crouching at your door. And what is the sin? The sin is love of self. It's loving God for self's sake. And we have this epidemic, this pandemic of Christians walking out their Christian faith going, I just don't trust God because he didn't answer my prayer. I can't handle him because of these things I've been through. I don't know what to do with God because of these things. And that's where we start to see Christians who have been in Christ and then something really bad happens, okay? Full stop. We're not talking about something minor. Really bad things happen in this life, amen? Many of us have been through really bad things. And the shaking starts. And that's when you find out whether you are a mature swimmer or an adolescent swimmer. Are you in the pool panicking, or can you relax and trust what's in the water with you? You understanding what I'm saying? Yeah. That's when you start to say, I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand why this is happening, but I know for sure the Lord loves me. Okay? I know for sure he loves me. And I'm not going to do anything to try to get him to love me more because he already loves me. So God, you're not my genie. I can't rub a lamp and be like, hey, 3 wishes, here we go. I haven't asked for much. I've been holding this, right? But that's often what happens in our prayers is we come to the Lord and we're like, okay, God, what can you give me? Brennan Manning, he speaks of this in his book. I'm sorry, let me rewind. The outcome for Cain is wandering. When you love God for yourself, you wander away from his presence. Okay? You will wander your way away from him. When all he is to you is just a Mr. Clean bar, you come, oh, I just sinned. Let me get scrubbed up, and then we're good. Okay, coming back. Now I'm going to go back into the slop, get dirty again. Okay, God, I'm back. I need you to do what you keep doing for me. I need you to promote me. I need you to give me a gift. I need money. Help me, help me, help me, right? Yeah. And guess what? He wants to help you. I saw this thing on Instagram this week. If LeBron James can get his son into the NBA, how much more can your father do for you? I laughed so hard. I'm like, man, that is so hilarious. I'm like, sometimes we just it's like, he wants to do these things for you. But we take the idea that, well, because he wants these things, I do need a Tesla. I need a new car. I need a new house. I need. And we take the benefits of who he is, and we start to pervert it and like, well, obviously he wants what's best for me. Jesus said, if I don't ask, I'm not going to get it. It's true. There we go, Bear. Oh man. Bear, you cracked me up, bro. We're going to land the plane now. That's great. Oh, Bear, I need you to come sit right up front here, right with me. It's so funny. You're here with me right now? We're good? Okay. Gosh, that was funny. Brennan Manning, speaking of this, he calls it the imposter within us. If you've ever read Abba's Child by Brennan Manning, you should read this. He calls it the imposter within us. It's what causes us to manipulate for love or work for love and to do everything within our control to play relational games for our own benefit, okay? And he says this in his book, Abba's Child. Cunning and crafty, this radical pretender of my egocentric desires exploits my temporary amnesia to make me forget that everything I am is grace, that on my own I cannot receive it, for even receiving it is a gift. That is, the grace to grasp grace is grace. The grace to grasp grace is grace. What is he saying? This whole imposter idea, he's saying that's the sin crouching at your door. This whole idea that the whole world revolves around you and that when you come into Christ, it still revolves around you. And that's what happens is we take our baggage from the world of love of self for self and we come to Jesus and he goes, put on Christ. Lay your life down, put on Christ. And we come in and we're like half dressed as Jesus, half dressed as a hipster. And it's weird because we're wearing what the world wears and we're also wearing what Jesus wants to wear. That's why Paul said, put off the world. and put on Christ. Because if you don't, this thing wants to take over. Its desire is contrary to you. It wants to rule over you. It's not passive. Its only goal is to win. Okay? So when we play around with stuff or play around with our ideas of who God is, it's contrary to him. So what does he say here? He keeps going. He says, the grace to grasp grace is grace. Instead of being confused at the extravagance of God's love, in place of heartfelt gratitude for the sheer and unearned abundance of his gifts, a shameless sense of satisfaction about my accomplishments, a secure feeling of spiritual superiority invade my heart. What he's saying is when I start to lose hold of who God is, all of these other things want to come in. It's a shameless sense of satisfaction about my accomplishments. Okay? The imposter is baffling, sly, and seductive. He persuades me to forsake my true self, Abba's beloved child, and as Cummings notes, become everybody else. To become everybody else and every other thing. The best position you can be in is, I am Abba's beloved. I am my Father's son. That is enough for me, okay? Because everything else flows from that. The solution to this imposter that tries to manipulate, pretend, and play love games is bring the imposter into the presence of Jesus until it melts under the heat of God's love. And I'm telling you, we all have an imposter. I'm not talking sinful nature, things like that, but we like to do things to get people and God to like us more. We like to try to prove our worth, prove our knowledge, prove our superiority, prove these things. We like to get titles. Well, I'm a prophet, I'm a pastor. I don't even like when people call me a pastor because I'm literally afraid of the idea of feeling proud of my position. Do you understand that? Like, I struggle when people start calling me pastor. It's not wrong. You're not wrong by calling me pastor. I am a pastor. But I struggle with that idea even because there's just that feeling of me of like, I don't want to be anything other than Abba's beloved. I don't want to identify with anything else because if I do, it's going to end up being for me. And I'm telling you, we're not at the clearing right now because it's for us. We're at the clearing right now because it's for them. We're at the clearing right now because there's weird Olympic Games openings and our kids are watching them. And we need to go into the world and say, you know what? I love you. Jesus died for you. And even though you want to mock him, he still loves you. He still loves you. Are we okay? Okay, we are fully landing the plane. Jeffrey Imbach in The Recovery of Love, he says this: prayer is essentially the expression of our heart longing for love. It is not so much the listing of our requests, but the breathing of our one deepest request, to be united with God as fully as possible. So when we come to the Lord, our number one request, it shouldn't be, what can you give me, God? Our number one request should be, I want to be enveloped into union with you. I want to be enclosed within you. Like I want to just be metamorphosized into something else in you. Okay? So, habits. What do we do with this? I say this at the end of every sermon. This is what we're doing. Okay? How do we clear the way for this in our life? What does this mean for every single one of us in this room? Because many of us, I will say in this room, love God for God. We don't love God because we can get something from him. We love him for him. But what if we're loving people around us for what we can get? You know what I mean? What if we're loving God occasionally for something we can get? So what do we do with this? How do we clear the way for the Lord in our lives? We need to be honest with God when we don't actually love him. Like when you're like, I'm interested in this whole Christianity thing, but I don't feel connected to him. I don't feel connected to the idea of him, but I know I want to be, but I don't. And that's where, like, for us, like on Sabbath and stuff, if you've been coming, we practice Sabbath on Fridays. Sabbath is like that reminder of like, we put all the technology away and then we're just left alone with ourselves and God and our kids. And we start to realize how much we might not want God. You're like, that's intense. But what is it? It helps me go, I need to surrender. Like, I need to actually surrender to it, to say, God, I don't even know how to keep loving you. Can we get really honest and weird? This is awkward. I'm feeling sweaty. Okay. Are we okay? To just be like, God, it's literally the grace that helps us know grace, that keeps us in grace. I need him to even know him. I need him to even love him. And to be honest with ourselves on a day and go, oh my gosh, I actually would rather watch football today than talk to God. I would rather watch Netflix today than talk to God. I would rather do everything else than be intentional and do something with God. Do you know why it's a good spot to say, God, I don't want to be around you right now? He can go, I want to be around you though. And you start to realize, oh, he's not afraid of me being honest. He's not afraid of me when I say, God, I'm struggling. He's like, oh, good, let's do this together. Come on. And you start to realize all of my doubt gets crushed under his presence. Like he comes in and all these doubts, all these feelings, and he comes in and he's like, it's just nothing to me. I'll get it out of the way. And then what are you doing? It's not works-based Christianity anymore. Now it's, I can love God for who he is, not what he can do for me. I didn't come into his presence to say, oh, I want to feel the chills today, like at the Ben Rector concert. Oh, I just want a beautiful moment of just, I'm in the presence, right? I want those. I love those. Those aren't wrong. They're not bad. They're amazing. But I didn't come to get that. I came to get him. Okay? The other thing we can do is we can pray without asking. What does that mean? We can talk to God without a list of things we want from him. And many of us, we grew up with this idea of like, this is what prayer is. Prayer is coming to God with a list of things we are asking him to do. Okay? That's not what prayer is. Jesus is like, first thing, how do we pray? Our Father who is in heaven, holy is your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done. Not mine, not my kingdom, not my will to be done. It's all you. He leads us through that whole process. What do? We ask him for who he is. Lord, I want to know you more. That's a good ask. Lord, I want to see you. I want to know you. I want to experience your word. All these different things. But here's what a habit that you could start practicing is if you find yourself talking to God only about the things you need fixed, talk to God about other people. Start forgiving people. Start praying for people. Start praying for your enemies. Start praying for, I know Steve has a 3rd-degree burn on his arm. I'm going to keep telling Steve. We're going to keep getting after it. Lord, heal his arm. Help him, Lord. Oh, like Dave's doing his pumpkins. Lord, help him have the best pumpkin patch ever this year. I mean, just like simple things where it's not me-based. It's others. It's him. Right? Lord, help me to be who you want me to be, not who I've conjured myself up to be. Okay, does this make sense? Okay, pray Psalms 23. This is a habit that I've started to do every morning under my breath while I lay in bed. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness. For whose sake? His sake, his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Here, we're going to pause. He's not asking God for anything. He's telling himself what God's already doing. And I'm telling you, God is doing more for you right now than you have any idea about. He is doing more right now in your life than you can see, ask, or think. And in this moment with David, he goes, oh my gosh, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head, my cup overflows. Oh my gosh, mercy and goodness are following me. I don't have to ask you for anything because you're already doing so much. And yes, there will be times where we do need to ask. Yes, we will experience loss and we will say, God, I need comfort so bad right now. I need peace so bad right now. There will be totally times where we need to ask. But what I would say is in our tradition and in our culture, we ask so much, we miss the fact of all the things he's already doing for us right now. And we don't realize he's not a genie. He is a father. And fathers bring kids in, and they teach them, they love them, they equip them, they let them fall so that they can pick them back up. Why do we fall, Mr. Wayne? Master Wayne. Sorry, Batman. Okay. Thank you, Jesus. We're going to end on a Batman quote. Why do we fall, Master Wayne? So we can learn to pick ourselves back up. Wow. Okay. Does this make sense? Yeah? Okay. So Bear got us. I got us. Here we are. This is church, you guys. This is family, okay? So this is what you do this week. Pray without asking, okay? And when you ask, let it be about others, not yourself. Pray Psalms 23, okay?